Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Tonight we are going to make a Mongolian beef with kind of a modified lo mein. We're going to actually be using some ramen instead of lo mein noodles for this, but kind of similar concept for it. So once my water gets to a nice boil, then we'll put our noodles in. But right now we're going to slice up our steak here. This is just top sirloin, and I'm going to slice it nice and thin. And then we're going to coat it with some cornstarch so that when we fry it up here in just a second, we're going to have this nice, just really like crispy fry on it. And then we'll make our Mongolian sauce as well as kind of chop up some veggies for our little like ramen noodles type thing. I will say, not like ramen broth. We're doing kind of a ramen lo mein, I should say. Okay. We're going to get these nice and thin. That way they'll crisp up nicely. Now I'm using top sirloin, but flank steak would also be delicious with this. You know, just cut against the grain if you're doing flank steak. I feel like top sirloin, petite sirloins are good cuts to use because there's a cheaper cut of steak, but they're going to leave you a really tender piece of meat. There we go. And I'm trying not to cut them too thick because I do want them to crisp up nicely with their shell, but still have a tender thing. But you don't want them to be too thick so that they seize out a lot of juice when you fry them up. And this is just 1.5 pounds of meat. But I find when you cut it up, it actually is a lot, especially that when we coat it and crisp it. So, if you're eating just the plain steak, you typically would do more meat, but for a stir fry kind of like this, you don't need it.
You have a question. Where do you think is the best place to buy meat?
You know what? I think it depends because it depends like what butcher your grocery store uses and whatnot. I do love Costco meat. I think they're great. Publix has a pretty good butcher there, and so I like their meat as well. Whole Foods, of course, they have great meat. But you know what? I think it really is dependent by location and whether your grocery store has a good supplier or not. Although there's this new kind of butcher place here. It's called like the New York Butcher. I want to try it out, see if they have some good stuff. But I'm kind of pretty big on when I'm cooking. I don't like to necessarily use fancy ingredients that are hard to find. I like to use things that everybody has access to, just because it makes it easier. Because nothing's worse than when you have to go to a specialty store to get one of your ingredients. Okay, we're gonna put our ramen in here. We're not gonna use the seasoning pouch. We might put one in our little marinade, but we're not gonna use it all. So these are only gonna boil for a few minutes, about 3 to 4 minutes until they're nice and soft. We'll open them all up. And get these noodles and we remove the packets. Now, I always say, growing up, I feel like everybody had ramen growing up, and it was like the 90s ramen. Did I put a packet in there? I did. I was like, there's supposed to be 2. Good thing we're not using it. Let's go fish that out. There it is. Good, that one was in aluminum. I used to love that growing up. Now I recently had it because I remember I was when I was pregnant with Jack, I had this craving for ramen noodle, and it was like so bad. And it wasn't like good ramen. It was the ramen that you got for like 25 cents at the grocery store back when you were a kid. It's crazy what cravings you get when you're pregnant. Oh, yes. Torn. We have a neighbor in our neighborhood who gives out ramen noodles. And I think that's the only time my kids ever get ramen noodles. Okay, let's get those. We're not necessarily going to use these in ours, but they're good. I'm going to give this a couple kind of tosses, let them kind of come apart with these. And once our water kind of brings them back to a boil, it should only take about 2 to 3 minutes before they're nice and soft. While we're waiting for that, I'm going to put my meat in my bowl here, and then we're going to add in about a half cup of cornstarch and I'm going to toss it with that cornstarch. So this will be my mixing hand. And I'm going to eyeball it when I do this for about a half a cup. This is going to give it, when we fry it up, a really crispy kind of coating on it. It gives that crispy crust that will then also help the like meat thicken up when we do it for our Mongolian beef. So just about a half a cup of cornstarch, and we're just going to toss it in our bowl until every piece of meat is covered with it. So we don't want any parts uncovered. Put this right over here. And I said, like, you could do it with tongs, but I just find it's easier to get it there. Okay. Beautiful. So we've got that covered. I'm going to wash my hands now. And then let's get our noodles. You can see they're starting to boil here. Beautiful. Look at that. It's going to be delicious. Okay, these are all good. You want to keep them a little bit firm because we are going to be making a nice little marinade for them. So I'm going to strain them, and then we'll let them sit until we're ready to use them. So I'm going to just let them rest up here, and then I'm just going to drizzle a little bit of peanut oil over them. This will just help them kind of not stick together too much, but we don't need a lot, just about a half a teaspoon. Peanut oil has a lot of flavor, or not peanut oil, sesame oil has a lot of flavor to it, so a little goes a long way. I'm just going to give them a little toss to just kind of help with that stickiness, but again, we are going to be tossing them in like with our sauteed veggies and then a marinade, so they'll come apart then as well. Okay, let's put this on here, burner, and we're going to put about just enough oil in here to kind of cover the bottom of our pan, and we're going to saute up our beef here that we've coated in cornstarch. And I'm going to put a little bit in here, about a tablespoon to maybe a tablespoon and a half, probably a tablespoon of oil in there. And then I'm going to put, again, a little bit of sesame oil just to kind of cut through it. And we're going to start kind of sauteing up our onions in there. But I'm going to let this oil heat up in both pans.
You have a question? Do you cook every day?
Almost every day. You know, there's times where we, go out to eat. Like tomorrow, we're going out to eat tomorrow night. Or, we're out of town and there. But I find it's just easier when we're a big family to just cook at home. And I really love cooking. So, and I will say, if you have young kids, going out to eat isn't always the most enjoyable experience, especially when they're getting very close to 2 years old. Okay, I've got a half a yellow onion here. I'm going to just pop it in this pan. And we'll start tossing these in and let them saute up. I'm going to turn my pan down to about a 4, so it's not super high. And then we'll cut up our pepper. I'm waiting for this oil to get nice and hot before I put my steak in, because I don't want it to be cold. I want it to be nice and hot so it crisps up the steak while keeping it also nice and juicy. We're going to use 1 bell pepper here, and I'm going to slice it nice and thin in like kind of strips for our meal tonight. That way it kind of goes with the noodles. There we go. So I've got our top.
You have a question? Is there any seasoning yet on the steak?
Not yet. It is just cornstarch. We are going to make a sauce after we saute it up. We'll remove the meat from the pan, and then we're going to make our Mongolian sauce, our Mongolian beef sauce to go with it. And then we'll throw the meat back in it once that has kind of reduced and thickened up. There we go. And again, nice little thin strips here.
And what type of steak?
This is top sirloin. So I feel like top sirloin, petite sirloin, flank steak are all really good cuts to kind of use with like a Mongolian beef or like Asian beef. They're nice and delicious and tender. Pop our, giving my onions a little stir here. We're gonna pop our peppers in and let them start to kind of cook up with there. Give them a nice little toss. Kind of coat them in that mixture of olive oil and sesame oil. There we go. And it's not quite yet. I can typically, if I just feel the heat coming off, I'll know when it's close. So while we're waiting, let's get our carrots. We're gonna make some carrot ribbons using our peeler that we'll throw in there as well to go with our noodles. So I've got a purple and a white carrot. So I'm just gonna first take off my whole kind of outer layer of the carrot. This is gonna be dry, not as nice texture or flavor. We're going to do it with our white onion or white carrot. Here we go. And then I prefer doing carrot ribbons instead of like trying to do little matchstick cuts. I feel like the carrots get more flavor, more tender, and a bit more flexible in it, so they're not quite as noticeable. And I just literally use my peeler and I just peel it until it kind of breaks off at the end. There we go. And this just keeps that carrot really tender and moist and just flexible. Yeah. I feel like matchsticks, they sometimes can stay firm or dry out.
Flexible.
Yeah, so they bend with the noodles, so they're not like firm little sticks. My husband doesn't know how to cook, so he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Don't need to.
Yes, you're lucky. There we go. Okay, I'll do a couple more. I also do carrot ribbons and coleslaw instead of like the ones because I think it just tastes better. Feel like our oil's getting nice and hot here, so we're almost ready, but I'll do my little water droplet test.
You have a question? When you're determining how much meat, do you do it by ounces per person?
It really depends on the dish that I'm cooking. If it's a meat where you kind of stand alone, yes. But if it's in something where you're going to have a lot of components, then I just really kind of think, like 1.5 pounds of steak for a stir fry always works like under 2 for our large kind of group. But if I'm doing just steak on its own, then we'll probably do closer to 3 pounds of steak for everyone. So, and same thing like when I do spaghetti and meatballs, a pound of ground beef and a pound of Italian sausage kind of works perfect for our family. So it's not, necessarily, cut and dry. I'm going to put these in. We're going to do them in. You want to make sure that they have their space to fry in the oil and we're not crowding them. So I'm going to put them in just bit by bit. And that way, you don't want to just dump them all in because then they're not going to get crispy the way you want them. And this crispiness is what's going to really allow that sauce to stick on it. There we go. So I've got kind of first batch. I'm going to grab a plate here because we'll remove them in just a second. I'm going to rotate. And we'll start kind of flipping these over in just a second. But while we're waiting, let's get our carrots in here. I'm going to give this a nice little toss. And we're going to let them saute up just a little bit. You see the carrots are nice and flexible. They move with the tongs. Okay, we're going to flip these guys over. There we go. And this is going to give you that nice crispy edge on our Mongolian beef base, which will really help that sauce stick to it and give you that texture that's really nice. There we go. Got them all flipped. and then we'll take it out. It cooks really fast, but again, resist the urge to dump all of your meat in there, or what's going to get is you're not going to get that crispy thing. You'll just get a soggy kind of base on it. Okay. While we wait, I'm going to slice up my cabbage that we're going to go in here in just a second. And I'm just going to use thin slices of purple cabbage. I always say cabbage and red onions last me forever because you don't need a whole lot to make coleslaw or, add this into our lo mein here. There we go. Get a nice little toss. And then I'm going to start taking this out bit by bit. These are kind of our crispy pieces on here for our Mongolian beef. And then we're going to add in our next batch. There we go.
Yeah, what's the seasoning?
Right now, it is just tossed and cornstarch. We will season. We're going to make a sauce that it's going to go in. Kind of think about how Mongolian beef is in this kind of sticky sauce. That's what we're going to make next. There we go. So let's get all of our meat in here. And I'm cooking this right now over a pretty high temperature because I want it to crisp up and cook that meat through, but without it leaching out too much of its natural liquid. And again, just don't overcrowd your pan. That way it really will be nice and crispy. There we go. Okay, let's check on our carrots and our onions and our peppers over here. Give it a nice stir. We're going to add in our cabbage now. And again, this is about 2 cups of cabbage shredded. And you don't need a whole lot for it. And cabbage is one of those things where you can make slaws with it, different, put it in our lo mein or, use it with a lot of things, but it stays really well in your fridge. It doesn't go bad very quickly. It's a pretty hearty vegetable. Okay. I'm going to give this a little rotation. And then we're going to flip them over. There we go. And just do it one by one. There we go. There. Toss them all. This one doesn't want to come with me. We'll let that saute for a second. While we're doing that, I'm going to slice up my mushrooms that we're going to throw in with our veggies. So again, we're going to have a lot of great veggies in our our lo mein with our ramen. I'm just going to use baby bellas, but you could use a shiitake mushroom here as well, and it would be great, or even just white button. And I'm going to grab those out. Perfect. I will say this cooks up really fast, which is really nice. Because even though we are doing it in batches, it's not like you have to wait forever for each batch to cook up. There we go. We'll get our next kind of bits out. And then we'll put our last round in our oil to cook up here. And again, just make sure you space it out so each piece of meat really gets its time on your pan. Makes it crisp up nicely, and it prevents it from just leaking out its natural juices. There. And just got a few more bits, but you see 1.5 pounds here of the top sirloin creates a good amount of meat. Got it cooking there. Again, I'm cooking it on about a 6 right now. I'm going to give my cabbage and my thing over here, a little bit of a stir. And then we are going to add in our mushrooms, and then we're going to start making our marinades for our noodles, as well as for once we take our meat out, we're going to make our sauce in there. But let's start on our kind of our noodle marinade. We're going to use a little bit of oyster sauce, about, I want to say, a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons. We've got a good amount of noodles. So I'm just going to dab it in there.
How was lunch?
Lunch was delicious. We had flanks, or not flank, I keep calling it flank because somebody mentioned we had skirt steak with skillet potatoes and fried eggs, and the sourdough grilled up was so delicious. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of our coconut aminos, or cocoa aminos. So I've got a little bit in this bottle, and then I've got another bottle. So we've got about 2 tablespoons in here of this, which is kind of a sweet, savory flavor. I'm going to flip our steak first, and then we'll add in our next kind of batch. There we go. We'll flip this over. And this cornstarch is just really going to allow it to get nice and crispy on here without it being too heavy. And it doesn't burn quite as easily as a flour would. There we go. Almost done. Beautiful. Give our mushrooms in here a little toss. I'm going to coat them up. We'll put our marinade in here in just a second. There we go. Okay. So we had our 2 tablespoons of oyster sauce, 2 tablespoons of cocoa aminos. We're going to do about 2 tablespoons of our Japanese barbecue sauce, which is like a sweet soy sauce. Don't think of American barbecue sauce. We're going to add in about 2 teaspoons of vinegar. Rice vinegar would be perfect if you have it, but I'm using apple cider because I don't. We're going to add in a squeeze of ginger, about a half a teaspoon of ginger paste. A little bit of garlic here. Let me grab a spoon, and then we'll take those out before I spoon it in. There we go. It's perfect. To give them a nice toss. I'm going to turn this down and turn it off for this. There we go. So we've got our crispy beef over here. Perfect. Now I'm going to pour a little bit of this oil into my pan here, but because it will have some nice flavor. That way I don't need to add any more in there. And then the rest of it we're going to use in our Mongolian sauce. But instead of using more, I can use this oil that has that nice kind of beefy flavor to it, which will just help crisp this up, but add a lot of flavor. Okay. We're going to put in about a teaspoon of garlic. And then my only real specialty ingredient that I use in this one is miso paste, which you can get online on like in Amazon or at Whole Foods, or they also have it in the international aisle at your like local grocery store. So we're going to put in about a tablespoon of this miso paste. And then we're just going to mix this up. And this is just going to have a really great flavor that will season up our noodles really well. Just going to give it a quick stir, and then I'll do a taste to see if it needs anything else. Let's get that paste off first. A little bit of sesame oil. Here we go. About a half a teaspoon. Again, sesame oil has a strong flavor, so you don't want to use too much. We'll put this right over here when we're ready to toss it. But before we do, we want to get our mushrooms sauteed up, and then I'm going to throw in some snow peas, which will add just another little crunchy vegetable to this. So it's got a good amount of veggies in there, which will just really give you some great flavors. So just a bag of snow peas. You know, the steamer bag ones are great, so you don't have to do the snipping and pull off the strings. We're going to toss these in. There we go. And we're going to just let them kind of get a little bit vibrant green, and then we'll add in a little bit of our marinade, toss in our noodles and whatnot. But now let's kind of work on our sauce over here. Using the drippings in the pan, we're going to want to do that. I'm going to put mine down to 4. We are going to start with about a half a cup of soy sauce. There we go. I'm going to add this in here in just a second. So we got our soy sauce. We're going to add a half a cup of water. And then I'm actually going to use my tongs here to kind of scrape some of those tasty bits off of the bottom of our pan to really bring in the flavor. So again, we've got a half cup of water, a half a cup of soy sauce. And then we're going to use a half a cup of our Japanese barbecue sauce. And this, I like using this in place of using a whole bunch of soy sauce because it's not as sweet and it's or not as salty, and it's a little bit sweeter, and it just kind of has a nicer flavor. But I do want a little bit of that, soy sauce in there, a little kick of that. Then we are going to add in about a tablespoon of ginger paste. So, or fresh ginger if you have it, minced up. So a good helping here. We're getting down to the bottom end of this. So this is going to add a nice kind of spicy kick to it. Ginger has a little bit of heat. Let me toss these real quick. You can see our snow peas are starting to get a nice kind of vibrant green over the pale color, which means they're starting to get a bit more tender. We've got our tablespoon of ginger in here. We're going to add in a tablespoon of garlic. And I'm going to grab my brown sugar here. We are going to add in a half cup of brown sugar. And the reason we're using so much brown sugar here is because we're going to add in some vinegar to give tang, but the sugar will help cut a bit of that out. And this is going to help also make a stickier sauce. But you kind of need a little bit of the sweetness to take out the saltiness and the tang from the vinegar. We're going to use about a 1/4 cup of vinegar. Here.
Do you have a question? Do you ever do grocery hauls?
Yes. Every week is kind of a grocery haul for us because we're, our family right here. Oh, videos. Yes, we do have a couple of video shorts on there of our grocery hauls. I keep saying we had a big one the other day from our Amazon Fresh, which we live outside of a big city, so we have access to Amazon Fresh, which is amazing. You can get so much there. But yes, we had a ridiculous order from it because I was kind of doing a restock. And I think we had all of our counters here and here completely full of bags. It was crazy. Okay, we're going to bring this up to a nice kind of hot simmer here. And we're going to let it kind of reduce down. And we'll let that evaporate out some of that liquid. But it's going to just have this great flavor. When we put our meat back in, that kind of cornstarch will also help thicken it up. Okay. Just getting there. We're going to toss. Okay, now our snap peas, they're all pretty much got this kind of bright green color to it, which is going to be your tender crisp. So we're going to add a little bit of our sauce in now, not all of it, about 1/3. And we're going to kind of coat all of the vegetables in it. And then we're going to throw in our noodles. And we will toss up our noodles. We're getting a great simmer over here. This is going to help thicken up our sauce. Okay. So we've got our ramen that we used, and I coated them with some sesame oil, but don't worry if they're stuck together like this, because you're going to take your sauce and you're going to pour it right over the top of this, And that's going to allow it to start to break apart. And then it will come apart really easy. You just got to you got to fight with it a little bit and give it a couple shakes. There we go. That way you don't waste putting so much oil on it when you're take it out. Here we go. And this sauce is just going to give these noodles such a great flavor, as well as the vegetables. But you want your noodles to kind of turn like a light brown. That's why they have all that flavor. And I will say, I said, we did use a lot of ingredients to kind of create our little marinade for the noodles, but I will say Asian sauces are very complex because they just use so many different things to create such a robust and delicious flavors. So they really do need the different components there. But once you buy them, you can use them for a lot of different, like, things. Like I said, I know it's like cocoa minos and the miso paste and the Japanese barbecue sauce, but you can make just so many different great flavors with it. Break this one. Here we go. Now we're starting to mix it in. I'll start pulling our veggies in here. And I'm just cooking the noodles over nice and low in this pan with the veggies because I don't want them to burn or stick. Man overboard. Beautiful. So let those kind of simmer here. I give this a nice little whisk. It's starting to thicken up just a little bit. While I'll give it a little stir here. Then I'm going to chop up our green onions because Mongolian beef, you got to have your green onions in here. So let me kind of move all of my little components over here. I will say, so I have two cabinets kind of designated to my spices. I've got a dry cabinet and a wet cabinet. And my wet cabinet has all of like my vinegars and oils and like sauce-based things. And then the dry cabinet has my ridiculous amounts of spices. And I have a really bad problem of every year when the holidays come, I think I don't have any of the certain like holiday spices like nutmegs, cloves, allspice, those things that I use with my Swedish pepparkaka and other like Christmas cookies. And I buy them. And then I end up having like 4 bottles of nutmeg. And you don't use a lot of nutmeg when you're cooking. And the same thing with the cloves and the allspice. And I said, you know what? I'm going to make like the pot potpourri one year, where you make the simmering pot that has all the great smells, because that's a great way to use up your abundance of spices if you've got those sweet ones. Okay, we've got our green onions here. We're going to toss these in at the very end. But again, I'll just check on how this is thickening up here. And I'm going to grab a spoon and give it a nice taste. See if we're missing anything. I'm just going to kind of coat the back of a spoon. That's a great way to kind of check how thick it is as well, and the stickiness of it. Flavors are perfect. It's got that sweet but tanginess that Mongolian beef has. And then when we add that fresh onions towards the end, they're going to be really, really like kind of popping. The bubble on this helps, we added that brown sugar in it. So it's going to help thicken it up, make it sticky. Think about like when you're cooking candy, how it's going to stick up and stick together the longer you cook it. You don't want to, cook it so long that you make, Asian candy, Mongolian beef candy. Okay, well, let's pull out a noodle here and taste it. Perfect. I have a little bit of marinade left, but I think we've got the perfect amount in here. So I'm going to turn this off, let it steam up on its own. Here we go. Snow peas, I find, are a really great addition because their flavors, they're such a tender but nice crunch to it that they just go really well with the Asian flavors. Let's check our here because I think we're almost on our sticky part. It is. Now, when you cook it up, it's going to be more runny, but once it starts to cool, it's going to thicken up. So I think we're good here. We've got this nice kind of rolling bubble. I'm going to turn off my heat And then I'm going to add in my beef here. And again, you can see our beef has all this kind of crispy outer shell on it. That's because we fried it up in that cornstarch. So we're just going to pop this all in here. And I'm going to just mix them in our nice kind of sauce here until they get this nice kind of sticky coating on it. Beautiful. And then we will throw in our green onions, but you don't want to throw in your green onions until the very, very end. As this sauce continues to cool, it will thicken up even more. It's just like when you're making candy, it's liquid, and then when it cools, it hardens. So let's take our green onions here. We're going to throw in all the green onions, and this is kind of a crucial part because it takes our sauce, has got that tangy little bit of sweetness to it, and the green onions give you that nice kind of fresh little kick to it. So just give them a quick toss.
You have a question? Will you be posting this recipe?
We will upload the link to this video we'll upload this video onto our page. So there's a link on our page where you can watch all of our videos on our long form videos on YT. So you can definitely watch there. That's probably the best way. I do send out recipe cards every week. I'm not sure if this one will be one of our recipe cards because I've already got my banana bars and my brown butter sugar cookies on there. And I'm making one more for the week that I put out for our members. So they're coming out soon for everyone who's already a member, but our videos are free for everybody. Okay, we are done with dinner. Pretty exciting. So let's kind of serve up. I'm going to move this over here out of the way, and we're going to grab a plate. Now, you can totally do Mongolian beef with boring plain steamed rice. We did it with delicious noodles today. So I'm going to slide this over here, and then we will serve up. Move all of our wrappers. Okay. Let me get my shovel. It should be in here, my beloved shovel. Okay. We'll put our noodles on first. So we're going to start up. We've got kind of our lo mein today. We made a delicious marinade. Ooh, I missed a bit. A delicious marinade using our cocoa aminos, Japanese barbecue sauce, ginger paste, garlic, just a little bit of sesame oil and vinegar we popped in. We've got purple cabbage in here, snow peas, just to grate all these wonderful flavors. But we're going to top it with our Mongolian beef. So the trick for the Mongolian beef to get just this perfect kind of texture on it is you're going to coat it with cornstarch, and then you're going to fry it up in like this nice hot oil to get a crispy things. And then we made our delicious sauce using a little bit of our soy sauce, water, brown sugar, vinegar, Japanese barbecue sauce, ginger, and garlic for a great kind of perfect, easy meal that you can make. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're cooking for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on the page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to that link, search for what we cooked for, so Mongolian beef and noodles, and you can watch and cook along with us again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all the different cooking gear and gadgets that we use in the kitchen. I've got my cutting boards, my knives, my little spatulas, utensils. This is my 6-quart all-clad pan. I've got my hex clad, all the different utensils we use in our kitchen. I've gotten there for you to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.